Hello, welcome. This is The Process. My name is Dr. John Bush. This is my Professor's Classroom Lecture Series. We are rolling through the quarterback deep metrics lesson 113. Uh, I started with lesson 101 for the 2022 season. So please go review that currently it's at fakepigskin.com. My classroom is there, and my 2021 material and kind of the timeless material is all kind of integrated in. I think you can figure out what is what there if you want to review some previous lessons. But anyway, we are continuing with the quarterback deep metrics lookout. I update this every year. I like to follow those big landscape trends. So let's jump on here and let's see what we're doing next. Oh, okay. So what we have here is a chart of the average fantasy points of quarterbacks, all quarterbacks, compared to age sectors. And then I give year sectors. And so you could kind of follow the year block and the age block for the quarterbacks. And at the end, I have something called median fantasy points. Median means half the population is above or below that number. And I think if you've seen the other lessons, you know since about 2012, we have enjoyed a renaissance in quarterback scoring here. We're talking anywhere from an average of 30 to 40 points higher than the group quarterbacks before 2012, 2011 back to the year 2000. So things have really changed. A lot of quarterbacks are scoring a lot of points. Passing is definitely something that's occurring, a lot more passing, and therefore quarterbacks are getting, as a group, more fantasy points produced there. So they're more productive that way. And again, that probably led to the late quarterback drafting scenario. Please review the previous lesson. I remember discussing kind of the caveat to that statement I just said. Basically, at some point, it's too late to draft a late quarterback. So what is late? What in the draft is late? You, I think, need to look and decide for yourself what is late enough and kind of have that line of the sand. Anyway, age is clearly important in athletics. I think everybody would acknowledge that age does catch up, and these are fine-tuned athletes, but age, wear and tear, etc., will take its toll. And one would think, in some ways, the younger the better, but there is the experience factor. So there is a balance, and it's probably more position dependent. For instance, we all know that quarterbacks Brady, Breeze, Ben Roethlisberger, some of these older dogs can last much longer than, say, a typical running back even. So there are some exceptions, and quarterbacks probably can be certainly push that envelope there, and Brady continues to do that, and we'll try it one more year here. Okay, so I have the averages under the years, and you can look at the kind of the patterns here, and I colorized from some ways high to low, but red, deep red is the lowest, light red is pretty low, and then the deep green is the best. And what we've seen in the year 2019 to 21, I think this is really interesting. We see a bimodal distribution here, and that's really something that's been happening and kind of new. When I said we have kind of a golden age of quarterbacks, I think some of that is that younger quarterbacks are giving the opportunity. They're probably rushing more, gathering points that way. And so that has kind of flipped the switch, whether that's just something that's going on or it's just the trends now, how coaches are kind of copying each other and copying what they've seen. But if you look here, some of the highest fantasy points are seen young and then old there. And notice that in the earlier years, we actually did not see that. We see the young and old actually being some of the lowest production here. So it's completely flipped on age versus production. We've seen a complete flipping of that, and tradition of the young quarterback coming in and not getting much of a shot and maturing into, a peak quarterback at 27 to maybe 33, 36 at the best, maybe even 32. And now we're seeing young, and then you have some of the quarterbacks actually coming on later and maturing. So some of the young ones may burn out, but they may survive to become more passers. And that depends. So we probably have a couple of stories going on here. And so this is the overall patterns now. And I think we definitely are the tale of two stories here before and after 2012. Next, we see the trend lines. And I call your attention to the red trend line, the red dots, that is showing the age and the fantasy point average. And we can see the trending here of the recency. Also, and again, here's on the left side, the right side, here's the fantasy point averages in red. So you see kind of a bowl shape to the trend, the extremes. And in the years previous, 2012 to 18, we see kind of that same pattern and a complete flip before 2012 in the blue and the purple. Really interesting data to see such a flip in the fantasy football metrics. So I believe one should definitely use this to your planning advantage in 2022 to help you shape your potential plays there. Seems reasonable to me. Okay. Let's see what. So this is not fantasy point. This is average of passing attempts. One would think this data would go along with it, and I think we'll see that it actually does, but I still wanted to run it through just to kind of see the pattern. So we have the same kind of situation, except we see its passing attempts. I will note in the last 3 years, the passing attempts median really has dropped down for the preceding 6 years. So it's 247, and now the average is 216. So that is a little bit intriguing and suggests to me that we may be seeing more running in quarterbacks producing those fantasy points. Remember previous fantasy points, passing touchdowns and rushing touchdowns. So that was kind of a big view of everything, all the production, and this is looking at the passing. So that kind of like we're not seeing the rushing in this stat, but since we see this kind of difference here, I'm wondering if that's what's out there. And I think I have rushing attempts coming up in another lesson, and we'll catch that. So since you kind of have seen this data before, and it does see the same trend of the extremes in age, and if we do the plots here, we see the same thing. We see the red and the orange in the last years versus the early season here. A little bit more extreme to the late versus the early. So I think the lower production here in the 20 to 23 is probably rushing, and we're not catching that in the attempts here. That is my thinking here. And let's see, I may have rushing. Yeah. So here we are. So now we catch the rushing side of that data. And lo and behold, as one would have predicted, I'll just take your point right here, to 20 to 21, 49.7, the highest that has been seen in 21 years. Here it is. These early young quarterbacks are rushing, producing those points, producing rushing attempts. It's all good here. And of course, the older quarterbacks are giving us some, but not like, you know, here's 34.5 or 4 and 49, really extreme. So I think that explains the passing attempts being a little lower here in the young, that they're making it up with the rushing. So I believe 21 to 23 should definitely be looking at rushing. Be aware that there is a drop off. Okay, so that good times doesn't last forever. And if you forget that and you stay too long thinking that your hotshot rusher quarterback is going to continue even to say, you know, 27, 28, they may not. And if they don't become more of a passing pocket passer, passing kind of person, they may not be competitive and may lose out to the more seasoned quarterback that's coming up, that's the less runner, the more passer. So I think you've got two populations here meeting in these middle areas, and I think the data is just kind of suggesting that, but we're not really, you know, just, you know, the smoking gun is there, but the data trends are not kind of catching it. But that's my reading of these metric tea leaves here, is what we may be seeing. So be aware, somebody like Russell Wilson has to shift to more of a passing and won't be, I mean, doesn't mean he's, you know, his legs are broken, he can't run. It's just, I think he's going to be passing more than the old one, the old Russell Wilson. And I think eventually people like Mahomes and Josh Allen and these kind of things will transition that way, or they just won't be as competitive. And then young, new hot dogs will be coming in to take their place as the youthful rushing quarterback kind of thing. So I think you definitely need to value that. And I think people are, what I think may be missing is, when is it time to devalue that or bring it back down a little bit? And the data would definitely suggest, at least at age 27, start looking for the passing more than the rushing. And maybe even at 24 to 26 would kind of a transition there. Is this good stuff or what? I don't hear much of this stuff out there. and people maybe have this data. I don't know what they're doing out there in Twitter land and whatnot, folks. I don't know. But here it is laid out, and the few of you listening, good job. You get it, and you should plan accordingly. And we will finally end with this, and here it is. Look at the skew in rushing here. And we can see that there's still been a little bit, even before 2012, kind of a rushing tendency here if you look across the age sectors, but nothing dramatic like we're seeing now in the last, since 2012 even. So it's really, look at the fall off at 24 even, whereas before there was still some life left in those rushing legs. So I don't know where we're at here. Maybe the last 3 years is too much, but I would definitely start looking at the 24 to 26-year-old quarterbacks and just be aware that that's probably a transition time, and their value will have to continue with more of a passing kind of thing here versus, just running kind of thing. So keep that in mind. Clearly, youth quarterbacks that can rush are certainly enjoy and will have that day versus later on here. I think this great data. This trend line just slaps it up in your face here, and this is good stuff, and this is why I do this for me, and I've shared it with you. So this is the kind of material I have in my head as I'm thinking about my drafting here. And certainly in Superflex, the obvious strategy is to try to tie up a hot rusher quarterback versus a pocket passer quarterback, so you balance out your team that way. And I think that can certainly occur. Okay, my dogs, I think they're gone. So anyway, this is Dr. Bush for the process. We've got a few more lessons on quarterbacks, but this has been really fun. This one has been really honed in, and I think it's so-called actionable material here. Sometimes the data is a little far away from being actionable, but this is pretty good here. I'm excited. Okay, please come back. Thanks for listening.